But loop recording is not very functional unless one thing, a very important step, happens. Okay? So in your notes, somewhere write in loop recording, and go. The first thing you're going to do is go to the preference menu. This is something you can set up at home and leave as your preferences at home. But when you're anywhere else, you do need to manually engage this. So this again is for loop recording. We're going to go to Pro Tools, Preferences, all right, so Pro Tools, Preferences. And then we're going to go, once you're in the preference menu, you'll see there's a series of tabs along the top. The one that we're wanting is Operations. And each of these tabs deals with different things, different elements. For now, we're going to go to Operation. And over here off to the right, there's a thing that says Record. Go to the very bottom and click the box that says Automatically Create New Playlists when Loop Recording. Now, I probably don't have to tell you what a loop is. So that should be, you know, kind of one of the simpler things to explain in this process. What's going to happen is loop recording gives you the ability to basically hit record. And did you guys discuss this a little bit last week?
I don't think I was here when they did.
When they did this? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, then good. This gives you the ability to press record and by selecting a section, essentially allow you to loop that section and continue to record. Now there's a couple of reasons this may be beneficial. I'll show you one. There's a lot of them. One of them is to maybe if you're performing or someone is performing, for them to have a lot of opportunity to get it right. It could be a long section, it could be a short section, it could be like a phrase, maybe it's a vocalist and they want to sing a line, and you're just like, all right, I'm going to set this up to loop record. Let's try it 5 times, and you just press it once and let it go, and then it'll hit the end of the loop and it'll start over again, and it'll continue to record. The problem with it is if by default, this is not checked. If you leave it by default not checked, every time it loops, it'll record over the previous content, which leaves it, it's only accessible in the region list, but then you actually have to grab it out of the region and drop it into the actual location back in the timeline, which is a huge pain in terms of your time. So instead, we do this, automatically create new playlists when loop recording. Now, in order to understand this, one thing I must highlight is the difference between a playlist, the main playlist, and alternate playlists. And what the playlists really are, and then after that, it's really everything else is fairly cake. Sorry, I have to keep jumping back here because the mic is actually back here. You can go ahead and get out of this window as soon as you're done. So if you're good, you can hit OK, as long as you check that box. I'm going to get rid of the virtual instrument for now. And actually, I'm just going to mute everybody except for my vocal. Okay, one of the rules about tracks, period, is that before you do any real tracking, you do need to label them. So I'm just going to double click on the nameplate, label this Vox, which is a common term used for vocals. I'm just going to make sure that this microphone's actually engaged correctly. Okay, check. So you guys can actually hear that live. I'm going to do a little something with that for a second. It's not really going to, that's not necessarily a good thing in most situations. In this one, it's not the worst. Let's look at something real quick before we jump into this because it's going to get kind of wacky. What happens here is at this point in time, what you see as I record into the edit window, anything that shows up here is considered the main playlist. Okay? And a playlist is in the Pro Tools world is a series of clips that you have access to on any given track. So on any one of these tracks can harbor multiple playlists. This is kind of one of those things that if you get a good understanding of this, this is essentially the way that you operate every day. This is an everyday operation for tracking and for editing and for processing using playlists. Now playlists are also known in the old school audio world as takes. So if you guys come from any background in audio and you've ever heard of something called a take, video has takes. Takes essentially are playlists. So playlists allow us to stay with one channel, which is beautiful. They allow us to stay with one channel and keep adding new versions of content on top. And then at the end of the day, after we take a bunch of takes or playlists, we can compile them together, or comp them, as a lot of people in the business term it. We can comp them into a single finalized version which has the best of every section of the take as possible. So essentially we are putting together the ultimate version of something. That's how pretty much every vocal production gets done. That's how a lot of music production gets done. You'll end up doing several takes of something and then of course comping them into one finalized take. Well, loop recording initiates takes because of the box that we checked and new playlists as it loops now. So now because we had selected that option in the preference window in Pro Tools Preferences, we went into our operations and we said create new playlists when loop recording. What that means is now every time it'll loop, it'll make a new take, and what it's going to do is the previous take will now get thrown into a playlist that's associated with the track. And the newest take, or the most recent take, will stay in the main playlist. So anything that's going to be seen at that point in time that's here is the main playlist, and anything that gets put in the playlist, actual list of takes, is an alternate playlist. So alternate playlists are things that are not seen currently, or not heard currently, while the main playlist is the actual thing that is heard as part of the track. The only catch to that is, the only additional element to that is you can make any of your alternate playlists the main playlist by just selecting them. So whatever one actually ends up being in here in this field at any given time is the main playlist.
So then that one goes into the alternate?
Yeah, as soon as you switch it to another one, this one goes into the alternate, and then whatever one you chose goes into the main. The reason you have to know this is because when you go and clean up the files, we'll learn this a little bit later, when you go to clean up the files, you actually delete unused alternate takes or unused alternate playlists. You'll delete them, but you have to understand the difference between alternates or unused playlists and a main playlist. You'll also see when you do exporting, when you guys do something that you should have learned last term, but something that we still use, save copy in, which allows us to do a couple things. Combine the files so we only have the media that we need, but it also allows us to step down from Pro Tools 10 to earlier versions. When you do select the items to copy and you say, hey, I want all my audio, notice it says main playlists only, select the tracks only. These are options for that. If you only want the main playlist and none of the alternates, that's what you'll do.
That's like the session plugins, right?
What you do, but these session plugins are only if you save the plugins as a setting.
Okay.
So if you never save it as a setting, you will never need it. So that's beneficial if you do save some preferences to your settings and then you take it somewhere else. But if you save them to your own system, you'll never need to do that because if you open it on your own system, it'll already have the saved settings anyway. You'll have access to them because it's in the same embedded.
So you used to just give me some projects that were useful. I was like, click that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and that one in particular is absolutely useful in that kind of regard. Now, the movie video files, you have to understand when you're using those. Most times we suggest, because we know how this works. I don't know if you guys have done this a lot, but when you make a new, like a new version of a Pro Tools file, you typically duplicate everything. Well, if you're working with video, it's usually a gig or more, and if you duplicate that a bunch of times, you waste a ton of space. So what Pro Tools allows you to do is resource only one movie per every version that you're doing. So a lot of times where it says movie video files, you can select this if you absolutely have no idea where your movie is. If not, you can literally just take your movie out of the main folder and drag and copy to the location that you want to copy it into so that you don't have duplicates. Because if you're like me, I work on a lot of movie stuff, and you know, a lot of times it's like 6 gigs, 8 gigs, 10 gigs. You multiply that a couple times, and before you know it, you're swamped in just versions of. And then when you try to backtrack, you're like, well, I don't want to get rid of any of them because I know they're being used. At the end of the day, though, for movies, I don't know if you guys remember using a movie at the end of the last class. You probably noticed that the movie is a single entity that gets dropped in, and you don't get to reposition the starting point, meaning it sinks to the front. So good news about that is if you ever if the movie ever gets lost in the session, but you always have to, if you actually have the movie somewhere, you just re-import it, it gets synced right back to the front. So there's no loss in any of it. Does that make sense? So, you know, only select that if you absolutely are like, okay, I have to have this version of the movie, otherwise you want to avoid it. But all that to say, playlists, your main will appear here, and over here, in this listing, you only have one now. This is where, it's a little teeny arrow by the nameplate, this is where you're going to have access to the rest of them. And notice it says new, which means new playlist, new take, or duplicate the current playlist, or duplicate the current take. And then delete unused, any of the unused. Now, a lot of times, I'll tell you this, I was just in a session, I know you would come in at the tail end of the whole thing we did last week. I use duplicate from a playlist as a means to keep a working order of the last version of something. So it's almost like, instead of using new, because people ask, well, why should I use duplicate instead of new? It's almost like this. If you made well, let's just say you made a Word document, okay? And you were building your Word document as you go. But in your document, you kept taking the same content and sometimes adding new content, but rearranging or reformatting the content a lot. And you wanted to have a running version of every version that you could think of, so that when you were done, you could literally go, oh, let's look at this one. Oh, let's look at that one. Well, let's look at this one. But then sometimes you were like, well, I like number 1 and I like number 3, so I like to save a version of what they look like together. And then still, when I go to the next version, I would like to make, now that we're getting somewhere, I love 1 and 3. Now I love 1 and 3 and 5. And then now that we have 1, 3, and 5, I want to make a brand new part, and I want to build it on 1, 3, 5 and make a new part. And then, does that make sense? So duplicate actually works to kind of do that, where you're doing this kind of a building collaborative thing on the playlist, so that if you were ever like, well, I like what we did, but what we just did, but if we go back one and listen to what it was like previously, and it has the whole full running thing that's attached to it, it's a little easier to do, and you can go and do side-by-sides of new versus old. Whereas if you always do a new take every time, it starts off blank every time. And a lot of times when you're doing it in blank, things like punches, you guys should have at least talked about punching, like vocal punch-ins. When you do punch-ins, part of the punch-in concept is that you hear what you just did, and then you're going to just jump in for a small portion. So you hear like a phrase before, you start singing a little bit, or you start playing, or whatever you do, and then you get punched in, and then you continue, and then somewhere while you're still going, you get punched out, and then they say, okay, we already punched you out, you're good. So that it sounds like a seamless thing. Well, the only way that works is if you use a duplicate and not a new, because if you use a new, there's nothing to listen to on your way in. Now this also adds the question, because I have people asking this, why bother making a duplicate if we're just doing a punch? Again, it answers the same way I had mentioned about doing the documents. If you do punches, if you do them to the main playlist, if you do punches to the main playlist, there's no access to what it sounded like prior to the punch, unless you duplicate the main playlist. So let's say we did a take, we loved it, except this one spot we want to do a punch on. We want to do a duplicate and then run it through, because it'll be the same. It'll look the same. You duplicate it, it'll just be 2 versions of the same thing. But the new one, we're going to use that. We're going to punch in that spot, and then that way we can A/B the one with the punch and the one without. Does that make sense? So you're going to use this quite a bit. Now, in this loop format, we just need to realize that under the options window, you get loop recording. And notice you can only do one of these at a time. So if you're doing punch, quick punch, track punch. Track punch is interesting. I'll show it to you because it's kind of a fun little deal. But let's say we go to loop recording. It has to be selected here. Loop recording is also accessible in the transport itself. So if you go to the transport, notice there's a little thing here. And if you right-click this, it gives you options. Regular record is just the regular one.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and so it's giving you all these listings. The one we're looking for is this one. You don't want to use destructive. If you've ever had that conversation, I don't know. Destructive recording literally means every time it goes through, it wipes out the original regions and they're gone.
Why would you do that?
The only time you'd ever do this is if you were so tight on file space that you absolutely had no other choice. This is something that is no longer as necessary as it used to be. When I was in college, this was a lot more widely used because back then we were on, yeah, I mean, 60 gig drives were $500, you know, back in the day. Yeah, I remember, well, even before the drives, before hard drives came out, we had 1 gig, these little 1 gig orbs. They were called orb drives. And they were like kind of semicircular. They were kind of an interesting thing, but it was a 1 gig. And that's what that's what we'd record to. So that's the only reason it would ever be useful. Nowadays, not so useful. I don't know why they even still have it necessarily, but avoid it at all costs. Loop record is where we're going, so please select it. Make sure it's selected. There's a couple of things you need to do loop recording. One of them is you need to actually engage loop recording. The other is you actually need to select an area to loop record. Now this is what I suggest. Go to the grid mode. And go down, if you go to grid mode and go off to the right, you see a thing that says grid. You see that? If you hit the little note beside it, please go to 1 bar. It's going to set the grid so it's in bars. I'm going to show you this, and you can do what you want with it, but I want to show it to you, just to give you an example of what this looks like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight a 4-bar series, okay? So I'm going to highlight bars 1 through 4. And all I need is to have a selection in order to begin loop recording. The next thing that I need from this that I'm going to actually do, and you don't have to do this, you can do this if you want. I'm going to just create a click track just for the purpose of being able to lay this to the grid. And we did a vocal production thing in one of my classes. This is a fun technique when you're doing group vocals. Because you really have fun with how this gets layered on, and I'll show you. But I've done, in my experience, what I'm going to show you is not only an easy way to track yourself or track somebody else. I found that this is a really cool way to track choirs or to track anything that needs a big presence. In doing it this way, I'm going to show you how to do it in loop recording and show you how to break it out. Okay, so just make a selection. Did you ever make a selection?
It's only 1.9. I don't know what.
Oh, it's because you're not zoomed in far enough. So zoom in a little bit more. You'll see it once it gets in there. Yeah, there you go. Oh, one more catch, because there's all sorts of little tricks to this. I do want to point out that if you're not in medium or larger in the view, and actually let me get rid of this. If this, in this bar, little ruler bar, if your track size is not medium or larger, you won't get this playlist option right here. Where the playlist option goes, if you go smaller, is off on this. It's going to be added to this menu. I know it's kind of hard to see. It's going to be added to this menu where it says track options. You click it, and it has a listing for playlists. So notice that if you change the size and you go smaller, you have to go to the left. If you go to medium or larger, it's just right here as its own separate drop down. See where that's at? Yep. Okay, so I'm going to do my deal. Let's see how this is. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to do a little
quick recording. I'm going to mute this so that you guys don't have to hear this painful part. What I'm going to do is I'm in loop recording, okay? So I'm just going to let it loop, and I'm going to listen to the click as a means of counting, which is why I use the grid, okay? Although, no. Oops. I am actually going to use count off to help me with this because this is going to just need a little bit of lead time. So I'm going to go into the transport and do the 2-bar count off. So it's just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Hey, and I'm just going to add another one. Hey, 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 hey. And then really what can happen from there is you can just stack those all day. Now what I want to show you with this is the playlist listing. You see how it's got 1, 2, and 3? It's essentially going to show, right in order, the playlists themselves. Now here's the beauty of how this works. They have added, in the last few editions of Pro Tools, in the track view selector, an option for playlists. And what it'll do is it'll show all of your available playlists below. And you can actually go in and listen to each one of them by soloing each channel. Now, it's going to get a little interesting, but I'll show you how this works. If I just play just this with none of these other buttons engaged, you can hear me. If I solo this one, it'll actually play this one. And if I show this one, it'll play this one. And I'm just going to beef this waveform size up so you can see this a little better. If you want to comp things, and I'm just going to go into slip, and I'll have you guys then do this yourself. If you want to comp things into this main playlist, what you do then at this point in time is you go in and you preview them. You're like, okay, I love it, okay? And then what you're going to do with it is you're going to hit the up button, and it's going to throw it to whoever the main playlist is currently. And so you can do this with your assortment of playlists, and when you're done, you know, making your combination of whatever, maybe this is your final resolve or something. This works great for voiceovers too. I'll tell you this, when I do voiceovers, because people ask me to do them, I just go and go, all right, well that's cool, give me the script, I'll read it a bunch of times, and I'll do it in a playlist form, and I'll slap all the playlists together. I mean, in probably less than 10 minutes, you'll have like the perfect version of it because it only takes a couple passes and a couple combinations.
So when you do you highlight the one that you want to put up into there.
Yep.
Does it put it exactly where it's highlighted?
Yep. Yeah, so where it's highlighted, it gets thrown up.
Okay, got it.
And if you need, when you get up there and if they don't match, you can make adjustments to it by sliding the region itself. Now, yes, sir?
Oh, no, I'm just
stretching. At this point in time, if you click the whole thing and it's over multiple regions and you hit Command F, you're going to engage, Command F is the hotkey for fades. You're going to engage a batch fade, which means it's going to fade all these at their adjoining portions. So it's going to give you crossfades for all of them. And then you'd set how long the fades are going to be. So let me, just for visual sake, I'm going to show you so you can see them, but this isn't how I would normally do it. There we engaged a 20 millisecond. You could really get inside of 2 or 5. But see how they're all there now? See, so we're crossfading in and out. Well, what you should have learned a little bit of, well actually we talked about it the first week. Remember how we were talking about the ability to change volumes for the clips. That's what these little faders are down here. So these clips we now have the ability to change the volume for, and the beauty of that is notice as they come in and they align with one another, if we're like, oh, you know, this one's just a little louder than that one, or so on and so forth. For the most part, we can get these adjustments down. So that for the most part, they're aligned. And then of course, when you're done with that, and I'm not going to do it now, you can just consolidate that whole thing with Shift Option 3 and make it one file. Actually, I can do it and then undo it. So it would just do this, bam. Shift Option 3.
So that's consolidated. And you look at it, it doesn't look like it was multiple takes, it looks like it's one big thing. Now I'm going to undo all of what I just did because I want to show you how there is another way to do all of this, or another means of doing all this that also assists you. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the playlists, and I'm going to go back to I'm going to keep the playlist really, but I'm going to go back to waveform view. And you know how there's an option, if you right click this or go to track for duplicate, I'm going to actually use it. And here's what I'm going to do. See how it says number of duplicates? I'm going to make 2 because I sang 3 parts. See how it says active playlist, alternate playlist? That's where that comes in again. I'm just going to say yes, let's keep them all. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the second version, and I'm going to pick playlist number 2, and I'm going to go to the next one, and I'm going to pick playlist number 3. You see how that was done? So that allows me to actually use those playlists and cycle through them as a group. So whenever I do, like, because every now and then I have a need for group singing, you know, when people want to jump around the mic and do their thing. The easiest way to do it is to pick one section of the song that they're going to do it in, and instead of sitting there and tracking the whole thing from end to end, let's pick an isolated section and say, are you going to repeat it? And they're like, yeah, we're just going to do this at the same time. It'll sound like this the whole time. You know, maybe it repeats twice in the chorus. So we just get the section they need, highlight it, loop it, just say, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to have fun with it. Just have fun. Just keep singing it until I say stop. Just keep going with it. What happens is, first few takes they suck. The next few, they kind of get it together. After a while, they really get into it. Before you know it, what you'll do with that is you'll go, all right, let's try everybody in a different location or sing in different parts, or let's just keep stacking. I mean, you literally let it go until they're like, all right, we're good. Or you're like, I have enough of what I need. And then all that ends up being is one giant playlist. And you do what I just did, and you stack them out and spread them out. And then all of a sudden, you have this huge vastness of group singing that was really done in a matter of minutes. And now they can go, oh, we like it, or oh, we hate it, or oh, you know, it doesn't fit. Instead of what we used to do before we had these options, where we'd really take time, take about an hour to do some group singing, and then go, oh, you know what, it doesn't fit with the song, we're not going to use it. You know, so now we can really get through this really quickly. So you kind of understand what's going on with that? All right, do me a favor, please activate, select the selection. Please go ahead and do something. You can talk if you don't want to sing, you can feel free to talk. I just want to see that you do at least 3 passes on loop recording, and then go to the track view selector where it says playlist and show me your playlists. Okay? Does that make sense?
So is that supposed to make 3 audio tracks?
No, make 1.
Okay.
Just make 1, and you'll do 3 passes, so let it loop 3 times, and then when you're done, switch this to playlist so they can see all of the options. Real quick, Pat. I mean, I'm gonna go to the back and let you guys have some space. Or actually, you know what? I'm gonna step out real quick. Step out for like 2 minutes and give you guys some space, and I'm gonna come back and you can show me what's up.
Okay.
So just keep recording it over and
Yeah.
Dude, this is what it was like the other one, because we all had to do like segments. So like Ryan, he's just like da 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 da, da, and I'm sitting there going, I don't want to talk. Everybody's in the room, you know. And he was like da 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 da, just right away. I'm like, oh my gosh, Christ is funny.
Okay, so let's try this out. Okay. I like chicken. I like liver. Meow mix, please deliver. It didn't record it.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
Oh, say it isn't so.
So you just let it keep recording you over and
I guess. It's not even recording my voice. Mic check, 1 2 1 2 1 2. Nope. got your settings at? Because it's not even recording my voice. Let's see, where is it going? Where's your outputs?
It's going, let me change it
Because, like, I got the analog good, but. Here, analog 1, and then goes to
to 1
analog
and 2, yeah.
Ugh. Analog 1 and 2 incoming. I don't have that option.
I don't, see, it's not,
What the chuck?
you do that.
So you have analog.
See, and so I think it's recording over. Yeah, it's recording over.
I can't record anything from it. I don't have analog 1 and 2. I have analog 1 and 3, or 3 and 4.
Oh, go. Oh wait, you're on the output. Go to the again, please. Oh, you're already on the output. Yeah. So is your mic on working?
Mic check, mic check, mic check.
Yeah, it's on. It just needs to be turned up. Yeah, it's at first one.
Let's see if it records anything this time. Mic check, mic check, mic check, mic check. Oh.
Oh, but here you're metering. You're still getting something. You see the meter moving or talking to it?
Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, it's just that.
Hello, 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 hello. Oh, oh, no, too much.
Yeah, so you need to make a highlighted selections for it to loop. So just make sure you make it, and then you can push record and it'll start.
Okay, so I just
So
like
you,
this.
for this second time you type, I'm trying to get it so it loops and does the playlist.
Hello, 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 hello.
Huh? Did you-
Like did the first
there we
one.
are.
Did you make a selection?
No.
Yeah, make a selection. And then, yep. And the hotkey to go to the beginning is shift return. So if you're ever making a selection and you want it to be from the beginning, you click where you are and hit shift return.
Okay.
And it'll take it to the front, it'll highlight to the front. Yep.
Okay.
And then just hit record and let it go. Don't stop it. Let it go 3 times through. It'll go 3 times.
Even with the
Okay.
highlighted section?
The highlighted section itself is what makes the loop. Otherwise, it doesn't have anywhere to repeat from, so you have to have it highlighted. You have to make a selection highlighted in order for it to make the loop.
Okay.
That make sense?
Yeah, and then you just hit the play, record.
Yeah, I would use command spacebar.
Yes.
Command spacebar will engage recording, and you just let it go.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
I like chicken, I like liver, now mix, please deliver.
Yeah, that's funny.
I like chicken, I like
Okay, you only get it twice.
now mix, please deliver. I took cocaine, yeah. Oh god, I gotta hear this. Yes, please be good.
Oh my goodness.
No, I won't play it. Why won't you let me listen to my awesomeness? Oh, that's because recording names so loud. Okay, well it's going somewhere, I just can't hear it.
I don't believe you. No, I don't believe you.
Let's go to, oh.
It's only giving me 2.
You good?
Yeah, it's only giving me 2 though. Who knows that?
It's only giving you. Oh, it's only showing 2.
Yeah.
Did you let it go to the? Oh, okay. Here's a rule.
Okay, rule.
There's a rule that says if you don't pass the halfway mark on the clip on any given pass, it will basically throw it away. It'll basically not capture it. So like if you let a loop roll through, and let's say it looped front, it went from the front, it went to the end, it came back around again, but it didn't pass this next time. It didn't pass the halfway mark.
Okay.
It doesn't get saved. It has to at least pass the halfway point.
Well, I did what you said to do, but I don't think I did what you said to do.
Oh, if you go to the track view selector and hit playlist, yeah, down by the track down the bottom. The track view selector down at the bottom. Yep. Where it says waveform, that's a track view selector. Yeah, and hit playlist, you'll see. Yeah, I guess not. Yeah, so did it not come back around again? Here, try it real quick. Let's try it one more time. And let me watch you do it. Because it's really this simple. Go ahead and yeah, record enable it, make your selection, hit command spacebar.
So I'm deleting my original thing right here, right?
You can, or you can hit new.
And then I'm making it, I'm highlighting.
Yep. And you can do a smaller section, otherwise you're going to be responsible for doing it that many times. Yep, and then command spacebar to record. Wait, you didn't record enable it, sorry. Yep, and there you go.
Then I want to go to analog.
Yeah, you're already on it though, you won't have to change it.
Okay.
Yeah, so there you go, and then just hit command spacebar.
Check.
There you go.
I can hear myself in my headphones, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there you go, and then hit command spacebar.
I like chicken, I like liver.
And let it go 3 times, alright? So just make sure it comes all the way through. And let it go 2 more times.
Well, I screwed that up a lot. But anyways, I'll use this. I like chicken, I like liver. Meow mix, please deliver.
There you go, and then you hit stop, and then there you go. So there are your 3. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, if you go ahead and while you're able to do this, go ahead and solo, like with the little solo button underneath. You can solo through each one and push play and listen to them. And then go ahead and attempt to highlight parts of those sections and hit that up arrow to throw it into the main playlist. So you can just see how you can comp them together. It might not be the most logical thing in the scenario that you guys use, because I know you guys are kind of just, vamping.
Okay, wait a minute, that didn't work.
Oh, wait, which way did you do it?
I don't remember.
You hit the up arrow, right?
No.
Yeah, don't drag it. Hit the up arrow. Yeah. It'll keep, because that's just going to make a copy and throw it up there. If you drag it, it'll literally take, like you just did, you saw it blow a hole in the whole thing.
Do you have to do
Slip is preferred. Slip is preferred because even when you use grid, unless you're making beats or something and it's on the money, it's going to be a little either ahead or behind, so it's preferred.
No. Okay. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
And then do you do the shift option 3?
Yeah, well, before you do shift option 3, please hit Command F. Highlight them all and hit Command F to do the batch fade.
Okay.
So when you get them all pieced together, yeah, there you go. But no, you need them all highlighted.
Highlight?
Yeah, highlight them all. And again, here's what you can do when you highlight them all. Triple click it. Just click 3 times. It'll do all of them. So in the main playlist, there you go. Yep, and then Command F.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Where it goes?
And then the milliseconds at the bottom, you probably want that to be a little less. You can probably do 5, somewhere between 5 and 8. That's good.
And then shift option 3.
Yep, and then you can do shift. Oh, and actually, let me show you something. Hit duplicate on that playlist. Remember where that menu is, right by that nameplate?
Yeah.
Duplicate it first, and I'll tell you why. Duplicate, and then hit OK. When you do a duplicate, it'll ask you for a name. Actually, you know what? Just at the end of it, click at the end of the name, and title it, instead of those numbers, title it comp. So whatever it says, comp. Did you put type box in?
Yeah.
I just put comp, C-O-M-P. And then hit OK, and then hit Command Shift. Or what is, no, Shift Option 3, I'm sorry. Shift Option 3. Shift Option. Boom. Now the reason you do that is just in case you didn't like the fade points or any of the adjustments that were made by the fade, you still have the version of it before you comped it. Otherwise, if you do this, the only remaining like tally version of it you have is in the regions list, and you still have to piece it back together and get it back to the point.
Okay.
So Ryan, I was just showing her when we, after you piece them together, so after you throw some of these chunks up to the top, just to kind of do it so that you can see it, just before you, after you make the fades, but before you do the consolidation, you're just going to make a duplicate of that. So let's say you were done with this, okay? If you triple click the region, click, should I say? Yeah. One more. Well, here, undo that real quick. Yeah, triple click. So you just go 1, 2, 3. Except, oh, you're on the smart tool. When you're in the smart tool, just make sure you see the selector. As long as you see the selector. No, higher. You stay towards the middle. Yeah, there you go. There you go. And then go Command F. And that's your batch fades. So try like about 5 milliseconds. So you type 5. Hit OK. Everybody's going to get faded. And then you're going to go ahead and duplicate that list by going here and hitting duplicate on the menu, the little menu above. It's just slightly above where that was. Yeah, right there. The arrow. Yep. Duplicate. And then on this one, you're going to call this the comp. Now, just make sure next time before you do audio recording, you label it the first time. Does that make sense? So label it so it's not just audio, but label it whatever it is, and then do that. But that way, what this is going to be is, see how these are identical? Now hit Shift Option 3, which is consolidate.
Shift Option 3.
Consolidate, yeah. So now what you'll have is you'll have the consolidated version, which is easy to see, easy to look at, easy to work with, and a lot less managing. And then you have the version before it, just in case you were like, oh, you know, I didn't like what I cut. I can just go back to it real quick and fix it. Or maybe the fades were messed up. Maybe the fades caused a problem. You can just go back in and fix it instead of having to redo the whole thing, instead of having to repiece it all together. So you're going to want to kind of make a practice of duplicating before you do consolidation.
And we could do this with the track, like the instrument track.
Yeah, it looks a little different with the instrument track, but it's exactly the same way in terms of the possibility. The difference is this: with the instrument track or with MIDI, you don't do a loop record. What you do is you do a loop playback, and the loop playback allows you to do these merging or simultaneous stuff. So instead of doing a loop record in the options, you just do loop playback.
Okay.
Now, while we're here, it does bring to mind that we haven't really highlighted this track punch. I know we were just talking about punching, but if we look at options, we'll see quick punch and track punch. Let me just show you real fast what the difference is. Quick punch, if we just have anybody, and the only reason I'm showing you this is because this is in the book, but they don't really highlight it as much as it needs to be. They don't spend a ton of time on it. This is how quick punch goes with the hotkeys. You're going to push play. You notice how I armed it. You're going to push space bar to push play. And while it's running, and I can just mute this so you can see it, so I don't hear it. While it's running, you're going to hold command, and the hotkey to record is what? Do you guys remember the hotkeys to record?
R?
R is actually not active for this if you don't activate the keyboard. No? It's Command Spacebar. So Spacebar is play, Spacebar is stop, and to record, it's Command Spacebar. So watch what happens. Watch what happens in this whole thing. If Command Spacebar is to record, and play is Spacebar, and if we want to do a punch, the operation to do a punch is you make it play, you see it playing, and then you activate recording, which is what again?
Command Spacebar.
So watch what happens. I hit it, and when I'm done, I can just hit it again and Command Spacebar, and it'll keep going. So if I wanted to do a punch in the middle, I could just push play, Command Spacebar, push Command Spacebar again, Command Spacebar, Command Spacebar again, Command Spacebar, Command Spacebar again, and then stop. Now what that really looks like when I do it is I just hold Command. After the first time I hit play, I just hold Command, and now anytime I hit Spacebar, I'm in, and I'm out, and I'm in, and I'm out.
Okay.
So that's punching.
Okay.
Please try that real quick. So go to Options, make sure you activate Quick Punch, and then just try that with your keyboard. It's fairly simple. You're just going to push play with the space bar to push play, and then Command and Space Bar to punch in and punch out. Yeah, there you go. Command Space Bar. Oh, and suggestion for this, especially for you, Ryan, unloop it or unselect it. Just hit Return. There you go. Because that selection is a little short, so you might not get to see it. Try it again. Yep, and then click. Yep, and then click out, and then click in again. Because you can do it multiple times. Here's the only catch. If you don't save when this happens, a lot of times if you accidentally hit undo, notice hit undo, Ryan? Yeah, you'll wipe out. When you do undo, yeah, hit undo real quick, you'll see this, this as well. Command Z, Command Z. Notice it wipes out not the last instance, but the whole thing. Does that make sense? So you want to make sure that you're doing Command S to save a lot. So Command S to save as you do these punches so that you don't get, because I've seen a lot of instances where something weird happened and someone forgot to save it and they hit undo because they thought the last thing they did was something else. Well, because watch, here's what's funny. Watch this, okay? Watch this. I'm going to push play and watch what happens. Okay, if I hit undo, watch what gets changed. And I'm going to keep going. You see how that works? Nothing, right? But if I do it in stop, watch what changes if I hit undo.
Oh.
You see that?
Wow.
So the problem with this is that you can fairly obviously see is that if I do stuff, and actually I'm sorry, the MIDI one doesn't activate this way. Even if I'm playing, watch what happens. Undo, undo. Oh, now watch what happens if I record and I do that. So it's recording still, by the way. And I move this or something. When I hit stop and I undo, although I'm sorry, it didn't move. Your expectation of this is that when you hit undo, it's going to move this or change anything that you may have changed, and maybe in your plugins or something. Unfortunately, if you do these and you don't realize that while you're still recording, when you hit undo, it really will undo the last recording. So you got to be careful with the punches because you just have to make sure that you're paying attention and you save as soon as you stop. Your first goal is to save. Some of my first jobs that I got were recording live shows, and I started recording live shows for productions and theater and all sorts of weird stuff, anything I make money on. And it was really stressful because you'd have to let the computer, and I know I may have mentioned this to you guys before, but you had to let the computer run for like an hour, 2 hours. One day it was a 4-hour run. And when you're running on 4 hours and you're watching it go, I mean, you're literally watching it do this for 4 hours. Your number one goal is at the moment you get a chance to push stop, the first thing to do that you have to do right away is save it. Because if you don't, if the computer freezes, and it does sometimes because it's such a big file, before you have the opportunity to save it, it does not auto-save for you in that format. Auto-saving, if you've ever checked it out, auto-saving only typically happens at an interval that you decide, and most of the time it's 5 to 10 minutes. But in 5 to 10 minutes, notice that it's 5 to 10 minutes. The 5 to 10 minutes could be in any cycle, so it doesn't always necessarily happen right after you complete a recording. So a lot of times you just have to make sure you save it and be on the money with it, because otherwise you'll really get messed up with this. This, though, is a really easy function for the most part. Quick punch. You guys kind of get it? Okay, now, in this, we have track punch. Track punch looks a little different. And I'm going to show you kind of what this kind of represents. Track punch gives you this ability to go through and designate which guys are getting the punch and which guys are not. And it's kind of an interesting thing. Now, let me undo it. See how they're all blue, kind of? And then one of them is a blinking blue and one of them solid. Now they're all solid blue. What happens with this is when you engage them, when you click on them, you're able to actually independently decide when they're punched in and punched out as groups. That actually is useful. I use this when I'm recording different things at different times. Not necessarily as a punch per se, but as I just need this on now, and I need this next thing on now, and I just want them, and I don't want to add any extra space. So you could do this to a new track. So let's just say I did new for everybody. I mean, you could literally do it like you see this here. And if that's if it was just all right, that's all needed at that one spot, bam, done deal, real easy. That's what it is, if you're wondering what the difference between quick punch and track punch is. Questions so far on that? And while we're here, this would be a fantastic time to mention this. You guys understand how to change the size of the track?
Zoom in and zoom out.
Not necessarily zoom in and zoom out, but the actual height, of the track. So, because I prefer this way. You can use this, or you can use, there's a hotkey, and you can use this. But a lot of times the hotkey, and just to kind of point that out, the hotkey, if you change the keyboard, becomes a different function. And I like to use the arrows, because you can use the arrows as part of it. I prefer to use these in and out. They're just faster, and you can actually access part of this with the keypad, and then just double click this anytime you need to see the width of the view. But the thing I'm talking about is track height. Track height is when you're doing it down here.
Okay, yeah.
And you can do it either here, or you can do it on the actual menu here. But the reason I bring this up is there's a couple functions that you do here, all right? And there's a couple functions that you do in the mix window. If you use option will do to everybody. So watch. If I hold option and I hit mute. Oh, that's not option. Oh, because that's MIDI. Sorry, MIDI doesn't count. I don't know why MIDI refuses to follow the protocol. Let me get rid of it.
Maybe it doesn't sound.
It does. For some reason. Well, watch what happens. I'm holding option. I'm hitting mute. You see what's happening? It's everybody. Same with solo. Same with record. Which is beautiful. Same with, and I'm going to get rid of this track punch deal actually before I forget. So, same with a bunch of other things though. Watch what else. New playlist, right? New playlist. Everybody.
So when you did that, you were holding option down?
Yep, I'm holding option and I go do something and then it'll do to all. Now some of these things, notice that this has like pitch and stuff. That's not going to change for everybody. It's only going to change for the parties involved. So obviously I can't make that change on audio if it's only specific to instrument tracks. But holding option gives me the ability to do that. Option also gives me the ability to change what I'm seeing here. So if I want to see volume for everybody in the track view selector, that's where I get it. If I want to see playlist for everybody, that's where I get it. I can do it right there. If I want to have everybody in write mode for automation, and we're going to get into elastic audio later, so we'll talk about this later. But notice all those are doable through that means. The reason I bring this up, oh, and the track height itself. Oh gosh. Sorry, there's one other. If you guys have a trackball, or if you have one of the newer, or like a laptop, I don't know if you guys use a laptop, or if you have one of the mouse that has a sensor inside, if you do side to side, watch as I do side to side, or on your track on a laptop. Side to side does movement, but if you hold option, I forgot about this, but option actually does zoom in and zoom out if you do forward and back.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So yeah, it helps. It kind of
So
goes
forward and back, not side to side?
watch what side to side will do. Actually, side to side, no. Oops. Side to side will do waveform height. Although it's not there.
Oh, okay.
But it's only for anything that has the ability to do this. If you have a regular mouse, it won't do it unless it has a sensor on top or the little ball on top. These will do it, but they're a little painful. You have to use the ring. You have to use the ring, and it's just annoying. So it's kind of better on, like, if you have a laptop with a touchpad, or if you have a mouse that has this, yeah, then that's fantastic. It's easy to do. Yeah, and control. If you use control, that'll zoom the whole view. But that's Mac specific. It's not necessarily PC useful. Anyway, all that to say, the reason I bring this up, and we can also do track heights here as a group. What I like to do when I'm doing like a whole session and I'm like almost done, or I'm focusing on just one area, a lot of times I like to put everybody in micro and only have the track I'm working with in medium. Because obviously I can see these and I probably don't need to do a ton. But I'm going to put everybody in micro so you can see this. If I click on a nameplate, how do I get like if I want a range of people selected, how do I do that? Does anybody remember? Anybody know?
Shift. Is it shift? Something click?
Yeah, shift click.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like you do when you guys are on like if you're working with files and you have a list of files, you pick the first one you want, right, in your range, you hold shift, you pick the last one you want. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, this brings into light this. If I hold option and do stuff, who does it do it to?
All of them.
All of them. Right? You got that, Ryan, right?
Yep.
If you have a group highlighted, if you add shift plus option, it does things to just the highlighted group. So watch. Shift option, mini, small, medium. You see how it's only doing it to the range? If I want to record enable, and of course, this one isolates the difference between instruments and audio.
So it's either all or what you have selected.
Yep.
How do you deselect them?
Deselecting's easy. Actually, you just hold, the easiest way I suggest, if you hold option, it'll click none or it'll click all. If you hold option when it's doing it, it'll either click none or all. It's easiest to deselect, hold option, and then click on it.
Got it.
But yeah, if you add shift, it does it to who's selected, the range of who's selected. But then there's kind of this other thing that happens here. There's a hotkey for this. Hotkey for selecting things that are not adjacent is shift, option, command. And then at that point in time, you're still, so shift, option, command, so try it. Try things that are not side by side. Shift, option, command. If this still holds true, the last thing still holds true with the do to selected, meaning shift and option. If you do shift option and you do like mute, it's going to just get the ones that are selected again for solo. Now that should help you, and it works both ways in both this window and the mix window. Now, as you get more advanced, the other elements that go into this are this, okay? So just, we talked about this a while back, first class. I mentioned, hey, in the future we're going to talk about another theme that I like to use for this class, and it's if I can do that with this, then what else can I do? What else can I do? Well, watch. Option, right? Option. EQ plugin. Okay? Option, let's send to bus 1 and 2. Option, let's go out a different pair of outputs. You see how what?
So would that be helpful when, you know, how like you were rerouting to one so you don't have as many plugins?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So when we did this, yep, and I'm holding option and hitting no sends and no inserts to get rid of all this stuff. Yeah, exactly. What you were just referring to was this with these guys. If I'm sending everybody to expand to channel 1, there you go. You didn't see much of a change because this was 2, 3, and 4.
And it all goes to that one, so.
But if I say none, you know, but yeah, now they're all going to that one.
Okay.
Yeah, so absolutely. Now, in addition to this, if you do shift, right, and you pick a range, and you do shift option, it's going to only do that group. This will be useful in the future because we're going to do some more stuff in the future that you're going to want to use this for. Does that make sense? So real nice and easy to do kind of element that helps you with your routing, that helps you with working with elements inside of this. And it allows for ultimate flexibility with this. Now, you're going to learn in the future, there's one other big thing you'll learn in the future, and it's something called cascading, but this might be useful for you now if you're using this in this kind of form. I don't know what you guys do with your spare time. I don't know if you guys are tracking at home, if you guys are doing any of that kind of stuff. But when I record at home, if I do like drums, I may use like 8, 10 mics or something like that, 10 inputs. When I set up my inputs and I label all my tracks, if you use Shift, Option, Command in this form and go to the input section and pick the first input, what it's going to do is it's going to cascade. Cascading meaning it's going to go 1 through whatever. Although that doesn't, well, that actually doesn't work for that because it's initial track. I'll do it here. So notice it goes 1, 2, 3. And if I had more, it would just keep going on down the line. And that allows you to very easily map it out every time you do it, so you're not having to deal with having to go, oh, this is 1, oh, this is 2, oh, this is 3.
Hey, how did you do that again?
Shift Option Command. So just remember though, before you do this, you have to hold the hotkeys first before you click anything. If you click it and then press the hotkeys, nothing happens. Or it only happens to the one track. It doesn't really get the message.